So I want you to picture this. You are in this absolutely breathtaking little port town, somewhere in the Mediterranean, let's say, like a tiny historic village in Greece.
Oh, yeah. The absolute dream scenario.
Right. You've had this phenomenal morning exploring, and you've just found this incredibly authentic little taverna tucked away in this cobblestone alley.
Naturally.
The owner is, bringing out a plate of fresh octopus. They're pouring the local wine, and the sun is just starting to hit that perfect golden hour hue.
I mean, that is the exact reason you travel right there.
Exactly. You are finally truly inhabiting this place, but then you make the absolute mistake of looking down at your watch. And your stomach just drops because it's 3:15 p.m. And that relaxation, it just instantly evaporates.
It's gone. Completely gone.
You throw some cash on the table, you awkwardly apologize to the owner, and you just absolutely sprint down the alleyway. You're weaving through tourists, practically sweating, just to ensure you cross that gangway before your massive cruise ship pulls up the ropes and, sails away at exactly 4:00 p.m.
It is the universal cruise panic. The 4:00 p.m. sprint.
It's the worst.
It really is. It's this psychological jarring that completely shatters the illusion of being on a vacation. I mean, you transition in a matter of seconds from, like, a relaxed traveler soaking in the local culture to a totally stressed out commuter.
Yeah, terrified of missing the last train out of town.
Exactly. It's a binary state. You're either relaxing or you're running. And for a lot of independently minded travelers, that forced curfew is the exact reason they swear they will never, ever set foot on a cruise ship.
Which brings us to the mission of our deep dive today. Because if that rushing is so universally hated and, everyone acknowledges that it ruins the end of the day, we really have to ask why it remains the gold standard for the industry.
Right. It's kind of the elephant in the room for the cruise world.
Exactly. So today we're unpacking a comprehensive guide by travel and cruise specialist Yvonne Jr. Blanchette of A Voyages, and we're taking a deep dive into Azamara Cruises.
Which is such a fascinating brand.
It really is, because this is a brand that has essentially looked at that 4:00 p.m. sprint, analyzed the anxiety it causes, and built an entire maritime operational strategy around eliminating it entirely.
They really did.
So we're going to look under the hood of their Destination Immersion philosophy. We'll look at the physical ships they use to execute it and, the underlying economics that actually make it possible. Because whether you're a seasoned cruiser or someone who hates the idea of an assembly line vacation, you really need to understand how different this is.
And the paradigm shift here, the thing you really have to grasp, is how a company defines a successful voyage at a structural level.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, if you look at the broader cruise industry, the traditional metric for success, the thing they plaster in bold font all over their brochures, right, is volume.
Like how many places you go.
Exactly. It's geographical breadth.
Yeah.
It is literally an arms race of port counting. 5 ports in 7 days, 6 ports in 8 days.
Right, check-in boxes.
But Azamara flips that entirely. They measure success by the depth of time spent in a single destination.
Which, Destination Immersion sounds like a very slick marketing buzzword. I think we can all admit that.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like something cooked up in a boardroom.
But from an operational standpoint, how do they actually quantify it? What does that mean on paper?
So they quantify it through very specific, measurable scheduling metrics. First, they program what they call extended destination days.
Okay, and what qualifies as extended?
That's defined as the ship remaining tied up in port for 10 or more hours.
Wow, okay. That's a solid chunk of time.
It is. But then you have late nights, where the vessel stays docked until midnight or sometimes even later.
Which completely eliminates that 4:00 p.m. sprint.
Completely. And finally, you have the most logistically complex metric, which is overnights.
Oh, so you don't even leave.
Right. This is where you literally go to sleep in your stateroom, and when you wake up the next morning, the ship hasn't moved an inch. You are in the exact same port, ready for day 2. And the data from the source is clear on this.
Yeah.
Azamara consistently programs more late nights and overnights than any other cruise line in the entire industry.
I want to stop right there, actually, and look at the maritime economics of this.
Yeah.
Because it raises an obvious question.
Sure.
If guests want to stay in Rome or Santorini until 10:00 p.m., which they clearly do, why aren't the megaships doing it? Why are they pulling the anchor at 4 p.m?
It's a great question, and it all comes down to international maritime law and onboard revenue streams.
Okay, follow the money.
Always. Most cruise lines, particularly those contemporary mega ships holding, 5,000 or 6,000 passengers, They operate on a financial model that relies heavily on what guests spend once they are back on the ship.
So the casino.
The casino, exactly, and the duty-free shopping promenades. But here's the catch. Because of really complex local tax regulations and international maritime laws, a cruise ship generally cannot open a casino or sell tax-free goods while the vessel is physically docked within the territorial waters of a port city.
Ah, so if they stay in port until midnight, the casino is dark,
Dark and locked.
the shops are shuttered, and the cruise line is just bleeding potential revenue for like 8 straight hours.
Precisely. They need to be in international waters, which is usually 12 nautical miles offshore, to legally open those massive revenue streams. So the moment the clock hits 4:00 p.m., those mega ships have a massive financial incentive to get out to sea, get the slot machines ringing, and get the liquor sales flowing.
That makes so much sense. I never really thought about the legal boundary of the casino.
Yeah, it dictates the entire schedule. By choosing to stay in port until midnight, Azamara is deliberately sacrificing that potential nighttime onboard revenue. They're making a highly calculated trade-off. Now, the ticket price reflects this, of course. But the philosophical choice is to prioritize the destination over the onboard cash register.
Which is wild, and it really makes traditional cruising look a bit like a speed dating event.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. You sit down, you get this really superficial, highly structured 5-minute impression of a city, and before you can actually learn anything meaningful, a bell rings and you have to move to the next table.
Yeah, and Azamara is more like a long, unstructured dinner conversation.
Exactly. So how does completely removing that curfew actually change the psychology of the traveler? Like, once you know you don't have to run, what happens?
Well, it fundamentally rewires how you allocate your mental bandwidth. I mean, when you aren't constantly calculating the time it takes to get back to the harbor, you stop rationing your exploration.
Because you aren't looking at your watch every 10 minutes.
Exactly. If you're terrified of local traffic causing you to miss a ship, you're going to stay within a 1-mile radius of the port. You eat at the tourist traps right next to the pier because it's safe.
Yeah, the places with the laminated menus in 6 languages.
Right, exactly. But if you know the ship is there until midnight, your options explode. You might take a regional train to a neighboring village. You can actually sit down for a multi-course dinner at a local tavern at 8:30 p.m.
Which, by the way, is when locals actually eat in places like Spain or Italy.
Exactly. Good luck finding a real, authentic dinner in Barcelona at 4:00 p.m. But beyond dining, you can simply stand on the deck of the ship and watch the sunset over a historic harbor when all the 5,000-passenger megaships have already sailed away,
Oh, wow.
taking all the crowds and the noise with them. You get the city back to yourself.
Okay, but this brings up a massive logistical question for me. If the entire business model relies on parking in the center of historic cities and just staying there, how do they physically do that?
What do you mean?
Well, modern cruise ships are the size of skyscrapers. You can't just parallel park a 230,000-ton mega ship in a tiny Greek harbor. It's physically impossible.
And that is exactly where the physical hardware of the company dictates the strategy. You're absolutely right. Azamara operates a fleet of 4 sister ships. There's the Azamara Journey, the Azamara Quest, the Azamara Pursuit, and the Azamara Onward.
Okay.
And what is crucial to understand about these vessels is their lineage. They are all former Renaissance R-class vessels, which were originally constructed in the years 2000 and 2001.
Let's talk about the displacement and size of these ships, because I feel like that is the defining characteristic here. The guide says they carry a maximum of around 690 guests each.
Yeah, about 690. To put that in perspective, an R-class ship is roughly 30,000 gross tons. The modern megaships we see launching today, the ones dominating the commercials, they are pushing 220,000 to 250,000 gross tons.
Oh my God. So they are nearly 10 times the size.
Yes. The difference in draft, which is how deep the hull sits in the water and the beam width, is massive. So because these R-class ships are comparatively so small, they can navigate up tidal rivers.
Wait, really? Like river cruising?
Well, not quite the tiny river boats, but yes, rivers that lead to major cities. They can dock right in the center of a historic city like Bordeaux or Seville, rather than dropping anchor at some deep water industrial cargo port an hour's bus ride away.
That is a huge advantage.
It's massive.
Yeah.
They can clear the sandbars and draft restrictions of tiny boutique island harbors that the massive vessels literally, physically cannot enter without running aground.
And the stats on these ships, just from a passenger comfort standpoint, are fascinating for something of that size. The source points out that 93% of the staterooms are outside facing.
Right. Very few inside cabins.
And 70% have actual step-out balconies, Plus, the staff-to-guest ratio is a very attentive 1 to 2.
which is incredible.
But the thing that really caught my eye, perhaps most surprisingly, is that butler service is included in every single stateroom.
Fleet-wide.
Yeah, not just the massive penthouse suites, but every standard cabin gets a butler.
And that level of staffing requires immense operational logistics. Think about it. When you have a 1 to 2 crew-to-guest ratio and fleet-wide butlers, the crew quarters and the human resources management behind the scenes are incredibly complex on a smaller ship.
Right, because a crew needs space to sleep, too.
Exactly. It's an amenity you almost never see outside of the absolute upper echelon of the ultra-luxury market.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here and challenge this hardware strategy. You just mentioned these ships were originally built in 2000 and 2001.
I did, yeah.
A 25-year-old hull is objectively old in maritime terms. Like, no matter how great the R-class architectural layout is, isn't there a massive risk that they are technologically and structurally inferior to a ship built in 2024?
Oh, it's absolutely a risk.
I mean, I'm talking about HVAC efficiency, marine fuel emissions regulations, stabilizer technology, or even just basic Wi-Fi capabilities. Like, does the ship feel outdated? It is the most critical vulnerability for any heritage fleet, absolutely. And it requires a constant, highly aggressive capital expenditure strategy to mitigate. You're completely correct that a hull laid down in 1999 does not have the native, eco-friendly dual-fuel engines of a ship built today.
Right.
However, classic ship architecture often provides a vastly superior foundation for boutique luxury than modern high-efficiency block vessels.
Really? How so?
Think about the aesthetics.
Yeah.
The scale of the hallways, the ceiling heights in the lounges, the sweeping staircases. Those structural elements have a timeless elegance that modern ships often lack, simply because modern ships are designed to maximize every square inch of revenue space.
Cramming more cabins in.
Exactly. But the caveat here is that these classic ships must undergo heavy, continuous marine refits. We're talking about stripping spaces down to the steel.
Wow.
Yeah, they're integrating Starlink satellite arrays, retrofitting advanced scrubber systems for emissions, and completely overhauling the plumbing and the HVAC.
Which brings us perfectly to the financial reality of maintaining that standard. Because a company can't just slap a fresh coat of paint on a 25-year-old ship and call it ultra-luxury. They have to invest serious capital.
Which is exactly what we're seeing with the announcement of the Azamara Forward program.
Yes. Let's get into this because this is huge news for the brand. Starting in January 2026, Azamara is undertaking the most extensive fleet renovation in the history of the company.
It's a massive influx of capital expenditure, and it touches every single vessel in the fleet.
So what are the actual mechanisms of this refit? Like, what physical changes are the guests actually going to see when they board?
Fleet-wide, they are introducing a brand new dedicated chef's table restaurant.
Nice.
They're also completely reimagining the Discovery's restaurant, which is their main dining room. They're focusing heavily on modernizing the decor and the atmospheric lighting.
Updating the vibe.
Exactly. They are rolling out a recrafted Atlas bar concept across all 4 ships and fully transforming major public spaces like the Cabaret Lounge. They want to ensure the acoustics and sightlines meet very modern entertainment standards.
And the most complex engineering feat, according to Vaughn's guide, seems to be happening on the Azamara Quest.
Oh, yes. The Quest is getting a major structural update.
Right. In December 2026, the Quest is debuting a brand new penthouse deck. They're adding 12 all-new premier suites, including what they call the Grand View and Panorama categories.
Yeah, those are going to be spectacular.
But wait, from a naval architecture standpoint, how do you just add a dozen heavy, ultra-luxury suites to the top deck of an existing ship? Doesn't that completely ruin the vessel's center of gravity and stability?
It's a great point, and it requires brilliant structural engineering. You can't just drop steel boxes on top. You have to utilize really lightweight aluminum superstructures. You have to meticulously recalculate the ship's ballast. And honestly, you often have to remove weight from other areas lower down to compensate.
That sounds incredibly expensive.
It is. But the strategy behind Azamara Forward is highly deliberate. The phrase they use is that it's an evolution, not a reinvention.
I like that.
Because they know their loyal guest base loves the intimate scale of the R-Class. They aren't trying to turn the Quest into some trendy neon-lit party boat. They are elevating the physical hardware to push closer to ultra-luxury standards without sacrificing the boutique scale.
You know, it sounds a lot like renovating a legendary historic luxury hotel.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Right. If you have a beautiful property from the 1920s, you absolutely need to go in and add state-of-the-art plumbing, high-speed internet, world-class culinary concepts. But you absolutely cannot take a sledgehammer to the original charm of the grand lobby.
Never.
Because if you destroy the soul of the space, you lose the exact demographic that was paying a premium to be there in the first place.
That is the exact tightrope they are walking. Preserving the heritage of the R-Class while entirely upgrading the sensory and operational experience. It's delicate work.
Okay, let's shift from the hardware to the financial psychology of the guest. Oh, my favorite topic.
Because gorgeous suites and boutique ships are wonderful, obviously, but nothing ruins the illusion of a luxury vacation faster than the friction of microtransactions.
It's so true.
If you're paying a premium fare to be there, you don't want to feel like a walking ATM every time you order a cappuccino or a bottle of water.
It completely breaks the spell.
Exactly. And this is where the Always Azamara inclusions model comes in.
The psychology of the luxury consumer is fascinating here. At a certain price point, travelers would much rather pay a significantly higher upfront fare than be subjected to the constant psychological friction of signing receipts all week.
Yes, just take my money now so I can relax.
Exactly. The Always Azamara model addresses this by bundling the vast majority of onboard expenses into the base fare, regardless of whether you are in an inside cabin or a massive panorama suite. Everyone gets it.
Let's break down exactly how extensive this is, because let's be honest, all-inclusive is a very loose term in the travel industry. A lot of lines say it, and then you read the fine print.
Oh, there are always asterisks. Always. So first, the guide notes that all beverages are included, and this means spirits, international beers, and cocktails during regular bar hours. It's not just like a cheap glass of house wine poured during dinner service.
Right, it's a legitimate beverage program.
Second, all 5 dining venues are included without any specialty cover charges.
Which is huge, because most lines charge $50 to $100 per person for the steakhouse.
Exactly. Third, gratuities are entirely covered, which completely eliminates the stress of calculating daily tips for the crew at the end of the trip.
And it extends into the less glamorous but highly practical logistics of travel, too. For example, they include port shuttle buses.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
It really is. If the ship docks at a berth that is, say, a 20-minute walk from the city center, you are paying a daily €20 surcharge just to get to the main plaza. It's just handled. And they also include unlimited self-service laundry.
Which sounds completely mundane.
Right.
Until you analyze the logistics of a 15-day voyage. I mean, if you don't want to pack 3 massive suitcases, unlimited laundry is a massive value add.
It saves you so much packing anxiety.
But obviously they draw a line somewhere. What is the limit of the inclusions? What's not covered?
Well, to maintain transparency and keep that base fare from ballooning into the stratosphere, there are carve-outs. High-bandwidth Wi-Fi is generally not included in the base fare.
Okay, fair enough.
Premium beverage upgrades, so if you want to drink rare vintage wines or like top-shelf age-statement scotch, those are extra. Spa treatments are extra. And most standard daytime shore excursions are also outside the inclusions.
Got it. But there is one shore experience that is included, and honestly, reading through this guide, it is arguably the most defining feature of the brand.
You're talking about the AzAmazing Evening.
Yes, the AzAmazing Evening.
If you really want to understand how they weaponize their Destination Immersion philosophy, the AzAmazing Evening is the prime example. On almost every voyage of 9 nights or longer, guests receive one of these events complimentary.
And we really have to differentiate this from a standard shore excursion, right? Because this is not just putting 50 people on a coach bus to go look at a monument for an hour.
Oh, no, not at all.
Let's look at the logistics of what these actually are, because the scale is frankly impressive. The source material gives a few examples. One is securing the Palacio de Cristal in Guayaquil, Ecuador.
A gorgeous venue.
They arranged for an evening of authentic Ecuadorian rhythms played exclusively for the guests under these massive glass domes. Or in Shanghai, they secure a private show at the Shanghai Center Theater featuring acrobatics and traditional Sichuan opera face-changing.
And let's just pause and look at the operational difficulty of doing that.
Right.
You were talking about disembarking nearly 700 guests at night, transporting them through a foreign city, securing a private historic venue, catering the entire event, and executing a deeply intricate traditional performance art, all exclusively for your passenger manifest.
It's a logistical nightmare, honestly.
It is a massive logistical and financial undertaking. And the only reason it's even possible is because the ship is physically remaining in port until midnight. A normal ship literally cannot do this.
Okay, I have to push back on this, though. Because a major critique of modern cruising is that it creates a bubble-wrapped, highly manufactured version of travel.
Sure, the whole tourist bubble.
Right. If you take 690 tourists off a ship, you put them in a private venue, and you put on a show just for them, how is that authentic? I mean, isn't that the exact opposite of organic, independent exploration?
It's a totally valid critique of curated travel. I hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to view it against the alternative.
Which is what?
Well, if you just dump 690 people onto the dark streets of an unfamiliar foreign port at 9:00 p.m. without a plan, the vast majority of them will retreat to the familiar. They will literally go to the closest Irish pub by the port, or they will just stay on the ship and watch TV.
Oh, that's true. It can be intimidating.
Extremely intimidating. The AzAmazing Evening acts as a bridge. It provides a highly curated, safe access point to deeply traditional cultural touchstones that a tourist could never secure on their own. I mean, you as an individual traveler cannot walk up and rent out the Shanghai Center Theater for the night.
Okay, that's a really fair point. You're getting access you couldn't get otherwise. And Yvonne's guide points out there is a sociological byproduct to this that happens back on the ship, too.
Exactly, the social cohesion.
Yeah.
On a traditional cruise, the passenger base fragments during the day, right? Some people go to the beach, some take a cooking class, some wander the museums.
Yeah.
They have completely disparate experience.
You ask what they did, and everyone has a different answer.
Right. But with an AzAmazing Evening, essentially the entire population of the ship attends this singular, profound cultural event together. So the next morning, over breakfast in the Discoveries restaurant, every single guest has a shared memory to bond over.
Oh, that's really cool.
It transforms a group of complete strangers into a temporary community with a shared cultural touchstone.
So if you have this highly inclusive model and the boutique hardware that can actually navigate tight harbors and the philosophy of staying late, the natural limit to the experience is simply where you choose to steer the vessel.
Exactly. The map is everything.
Let's analyze their deployment strategy because the itineraries they're putting out are really unique.
They heavily favor a format they call the country-intensive itinerary.
Right.
This is a direct rejection of the superficial pan-European sweep. You know the ones where a ship docks in Italy on Monday, France on Tuesday, and Spain on Wednesday?
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. You don't learn anything about the countries.
Right.
Instead, Azamara will dedicate an entire 10 to 15 night sailing to exploring the nuances of a single nation.
And the logistics of their Japan-intensive itinerary are a great example of this. The guide mentions they time the sailing specifically for cherry blossom season, hitting major hubs like Tokyo and Kobe, but also smaller ports like Kanazawa and Hiroshima.
Which is incredible.
Or they take the Azamara pursuit and do a 15-night deep dive into China. In Greece, they actually bypass the massive crowded ports in favor of rotating through smaller Aegean islands and hidden Peloponnesian harbors.
And if we look at the friction of travel, the actual pain points of a vacation, a country-intensive cruise, solves a massive logistical headache for the traveler.
How so? Like, why not just fly to Japan and take the train?
Well, think about what it takes to attempt a 15-day deep dive of Japan by land. You are navigating the Shinkansen train network with heavy luggage. You are checking in and out of 6 different hotels.
Oh, the packing and unpacking.
It's the worst part of traveling. You're trying to decipher train schedules. You're trying to find restaurants in unfamiliar neighborhoods when you are already exhausted from traveling all day. It's highly rewarding, sure, but the friction is immense.
Whereas on a 690-passenger ship, you unpack your suitcase exactly once. The butler hangs your clothes in the closet. You sleep in the exact same premium bed every night, but every single morning you open the curtains to a completely new, hyper-local geography. It essentially removes the transit friction entirely.
It's brilliant. And looking ahead to their 2026 deployment, you can see their ambition really scaling up. From March to October of 2026, they were deploying 3 of their 4 ships exclusively in Europe, utilizing their small draft to visit 5 maiden ports that they have literally never accessed before.
That's a huge European footprint.
It is. They are also programming 3 highly specific solar eclipse cruises in August 2026.
Oh, that's clever.
Right. Utilizing the mobility of the ships to mathematically position them right in the path of totality, out at sea where there's no light pollution.
But the absolute mammoth undertaking for 2026, the one that just jumps off the page, is the Azamara Onwards World Voyage.
Oh, it's unprecedented.
Departing Miami in January 2026, this is a 155-night global circumnavigation. It spans 36 countries, and it includes 55 overnight and late-night port stays, along with 60 extended destination days.
The logistical matrix required to execute a 155-night world voyage with 55 overnight stays is, frankly, staggering.
I can't even imagine.
We are talking about berthing rights that must be negotiated years in advance. When a ship stays overnight, the Port Authority charges exponentially higher docking fees.
Because you're taking up the spot for 2 days.
Exactly. You have to arrange local security for the gangway through the night. You have to manage waste offloading across 36 different sets of environmental jurisdictions.
Wow.
And you have to bunker fuel and provision fresh food for 155 days without the menus becoming repetitive for a highly demanding guest base who's on board for 5 months.
That is wild. But the fact that they are scaling up the destination immersion philosophy on a global voyage, rather than just diluting it for operational ease, speaks to absolute brand discipline.
It really does. They aren't cutting corners.
And executing that kind of discipline requires a very specific corporate structure. The history of who actually owns and operates Azamara explains a lot about how they are able to make these aggressive investments in the Azamara Forward program and these massive world voyage logistics.
The corporate lineage here is critical to understanding the brand's current trajectory. The brand was founded in 2007 as a direct offshoot of Celebrity Cruises.
Okay.
That meant that for the first 14 years of its existence, Azamara was operating under the massive umbrella of the Royal Caribbean Group, which is obviously a publicly traded, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate.
But then a fundamental pivot happened recently. In March 2021, Royal Caribbean Group sold the Azamara brand entirely. They sold it to a private equity firm called Sycamore Partners for $201 million.
Which was a massive deal.
So they are now operating completely independently, led since May 2024 by their CEO, Dondra Ritzenthaler.
Let's analyze the mechanics of that private equity acquisition, because it fundamentally changed the trajectory of the company. When you are a boutique, four-ship brand operating inside a massive conglomerate like Royal Caribbean, a company whose primary focus is building $1.5 billion, 6,000 passenger floating cities like the new Icon class.
You're just a footnote on the balance sheet.
Exactly. You're an afterthought.
It makes me think of the classic indie rock band metaphor.
Oh, how so?
Okay, so you have this critically acclaimed indie band, right? And they're signed to a massive pop record label. They make great music. They have a fiercely loyal fan base. But the label executives have no idea what to do with them because they don't produce top 40 stadium hits.
Right. They don't fit the mold.
So when it comes time to allocate the capital expenditure budget, you know, the tour money, the marketing, the studio time, all the cash goes to the pop stars.
Yeah.
And the indie band is just starved of resources.
That is the perfect analogy. In the corporate cruise world, capital expenditure fights are brutal. Inside Royal Caribbean, Azamara was always going to lose the budget battle to a new megaship water slide or some new private island development.
It's just simple math for the parent company.
Exactly. So by being acquired by Sycamore Partners, Azamara was liberated from that fight. They now operate independently. And Sycamore, as a private equity firm, understands that to generate a return on their $201 million investment, they have to aggressively invest in the product.
Which is the exact financial mechanism driving the Azamara Forward renovations and the new penthouse deck on the Quest.
Yes. They finally have the agility and the autonomous capital to really lean into what makes them special.
And that independence allows them to sharply differentiate themselves from the rest of the industry. Because if we look at the market, travelers have choices. How does Azamara actually stack up against its direct competitors?
The competitive set is highly nuanced here. Let's look at Oceania Cruises first. They operate in a similar premium to luxury space. Oceania has a much larger fleet, which gives them more departure variability, and they have built their reputation heavily around culinary excellence. They have incredible food. However, Oceania does not dedicate the same sheer volume of hours to late-night and overnight port stays as Azamara.
So if the overnight is your priority, Azamara wins.
Exactly. Then you have Viking Ocean, which is an absolute juggernaut in the industry right now.
Yeah, you see their ads everywhere.
Everywhere. Now, Viking operates on a fundamentally different philosophy of enrichment. Viking focuses heavily on onboard academics. They partner with TED. They have resident historians on the ships. They offer deeply academic destination lectures.
Oh, interesting. So it's very cerebral.
Highly cerebral product. However, their ships are physically larger. They carry around 930 guests compared to Azamara's 690. Furthermore, their inclusion model differs. Viking does not fully include spirits and cocktails outside of mealtimes the way Azamara does during bar hours.
Ah, okay. So the bar tab could sneak up on you. And then at the absolute top end of the spectrum, you have Silversea.
Silversea operates in the true ultra-luxury and expedition space. It is an all-suite product. They offer fleet-wide butler service as well, and they have an incredible footprint in polar expeditions.
So Antarctica and the Arctic.
Right. But the financial mechanism there is a significantly higher barrier to entry.
Yeah.
I mean, the price point is staggering.
Right. It's a completely different tax bracket.
Exactly. So Azamara has positioned itself in a very specific, highly defensible niche. They sit right above the premium lines. They dominate the metric of time in port. They offer an aggressive inclusion model, but they do it without hitting the astronomical price tags of the true ultra-luxury expedition brands.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of all this data. We know the economics, we know the hardware, we know the itineraries, the corporate history, but who is the actual human being that belongs on an Azamara ship?
The psychographic profile of the target demographic is very distinct. Demographically, they are independently minded adults, usually 50 years of age and older. But psychographically, they are highly experienced travelers.
Meaning they aren't rookies.
Right. This is not the consumer looking to check the Eiffel Tower or the Colosseum off a bucket list. They've already done the major European capitals. They're looking to go deeper into the secondary and tertiary ports.
It seems like it's perfect for the traveler who is looking to step up from the mass market premium lines. Like, if you have sailed Celebrity, Holland America, or Princess, and you enjoyed the service but hated the crowds and the massive queues, this is the logical progression.
It is the exact logical next step. It is for the couple who places immense value on waking up anchored in a quiet Montenegrin bay and realizing they have absolutely no schedule to keep.
That sounds heavenly. But conversely, we must be intellectually honest about who this product will disappoint, because it's clearly not for everyone.
Oh, absolutely not. If your travel psychology equates value with constant kinetic stimulation, this is the wrong brand for you.
Right. If you want a roller coaster on the top deck.
Exactly. If you require sprawling multi-deck entertainment complexes, Broadway-style theatrical productions, casinos that rival Las Vegas, or massive pool decks with water slides, the physical limitations of a 690-guest ship will deeply frustrate you.
And what about families?
Well, while they do not strictly ban children, the depth of the itineraries, the lack of onboard youth facilities, and the quiet atmosphere naturally curate an adult-exclusive environment. It is really not designed for multi-generational family vacations with young kids.
Yeah, kids would probably be pretty bored.
They would. The choice really boils down to a fundamental binary in how you view the purpose of travel.
Which is what?
Are you the kind of person who feels comforted by the structure of being told exactly what time to be back on the tour bus? Or do you crave the autonomy to wander into a tiny, family-run taverna at 9:00 p.m., order a dish you can't pronounce, and sit there until the owner brings out the hidden local vintage?
That really is the dividing line.
It is.
So, to quickly summarize the mechanics we've analyzed today, Azamara is leveraging the physical advantages of 4 690-passenger R-Class ships the Journey, Quest, Pursuit, and Onward to bypass the limitations of modern megaships.
Yes.
They are utilizing private equity capital through Sycamore Partners to execute the massive Azamara Forward hardware upgrades. They've constructed an Always Azamara financial model that removes the friction of microtransactions, and they deploy all of this to achieve industry-leading time in port, culminating in exclusive logistical feats like those AzAmazing Evenings.
You know, if we pull all the way back to look at the broader implications of this business model, it forces the consumer to confront a very uncomfortable truth about modern leisure time.
How so?
Well, we live in an algorithmic era,
Yeah.
right? Where social media heavily incentivizes the rapid accumulation of geography.
Oh, absolutely. Collecting countries like stamps.
Exactly. The modern traveler is pressured to collect destinations, snap the geotagged photo just to prove they were there, and then immediately rush to the next waypoint.
It's exhausting.
In that societal context, choosing to intentionally slow down, to spend 2 full days and a night, anchored quietly in a single, unhurried harbor, sacrificing the breadth of a map for the depth of an experience, is almost an act of defiance against the hustle culture of modern tourism.
Wow. It's the ultimate luxury of time. So the next time you sit down to allocate your travel budget and plan a journey, you have to ask yourself a very simple question. Are you traveling just to visit a place, or are you traveling to actually inhabit it? Because if you choose to inhabit it, you never have to do that 4:00 p.m. sprint down the cobblestones again. You can simply order another plate of octopus, watch the sun go down, and know your ship is waiting for you whenever you are ready to come home. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Azamara Cruises, the mechanics of destination immersion, and the changing landscape of maritime luxury. We hope this analysis helps you navigate exactly how you want to experience the world on your next voyage.